This training is going to cover troubleshooting CSM syncs. There are 4 parts of the troubleshooting steps for CSM syncs, which is making sure your rule logger is set to debug, opening up the CSM logs, looking for error traces before the section in the logs marked root_wait, and then understanding those errors. First, we're going to show you how to actually set that logger to debug. You're going to go into your Team Connect environment, go to the admin tab, go to your logging section, and under the logger system logger section, you're going to find the rule logger. You're going to set that to debug. Before you gather these logs, it's always easiest to make sure that those logs are concise and specific to your section of testing. So go ahead and clear those CSM appenders, and that'll clear the logs out. If you go to view the appender logs, there's nothing in there. Next step is to actually go to the CSM sync itself and run that sync. Currently it is stopped. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Once it starts, it's going to take a few seconds. While we're waiting for that, we're going to go ahead and review a KB article titled CSM Sync Information. This explains how to see the full CSM sync, which is what we're going over now, but also this specifies parts of the CSM sync. The parts that are going to get executed are the synchronizations for AFAs, vendor syncs, timekeepers, budgets, invoices, documents, matters, and they do occur in this specific order. And we'll see that in the logs in just a bit. Every section for AFA, every sync for the matter, all the information for the rate request sync will be included in the actual logs. We can see here that it has been completed in 20 seconds. If you are missing this information, or if you want some confirmation from your clients, go ahead and ask them to go to the history tab and go to the actual sync that was completed. This lets us know how long the actual sync took and if there were any number of invoices, attachments, so that lets us know maybe a sync that took a very long time was because there were 250 invoices with 1,000 line items. But that's a good check there on the history tab. Once you have completed the sync, you can grab this connection log, which is the same as the CSM appender. If you go to the CSM appender under the logging section under the admin tab, you will also find the same logs. You can see here that we have a marker for Manila Unsaba starting the synchronization. Once that has been started, you'll also see that it does a couple of checks and then it starts the synchronization. Synchronization begins as noted here. Then we're going to go, next step is AFAs. Are there any AFAs? Is it enabled? Is there new information to pull in? And then the vendor synchronization and so on and so forth. All of these are in the specific order as noted in this KB article. You can see here that there's a lot of information that's being checked and double checked, and you can see these timekeepers that are being mapped. You can see the number of timekeepers that's on a specific vendor. So if you're having issues or error messages with those or data discrepancies with a specific vendor, you can find that information here in the logs. It does clearly write it out for you. Once it's been completed, you will see a synchronization end. All of your error messages would be above the root_wait section of the logs. So if you find any error traces, that's what you're looking for. If clients say my CSM sync is broken, this is the first thing you're going to look for. You're going to grab these logs with the rule logger set to debug, and then you're going to find the section that error message is occurring and be able to assess if there needs to be a correction on the data side in Team Connect or CSM, or if there's a specific rule that's being triggered. It will be shown here in the logs. Seeing how we don't have any error messages, I'm going to go right ahead and go into our Salesforce, where we can find a couple of cases regarding CSM Sync error messages. This is going to be your best source of information when you're trying to figure out how to solve a CSM error message. There's a couple of examples here. This first one is regarding a CSM error today we're going live and they want to make this ready. So they sent us a screenshot. Let's go ahead and open that email with the screenshot. The error message reads, connection to Collaborati cannot be established. Any changes you made may be lost. So this tells us that the CSM ID does not match the information in Collaborati. When that occurs, our Collaborati team is here to reset those CSM IDs for you, or you can look at the other trainings regarding Collaborati and CSM connections and understand how to reset that as well. We will not be covering that here, but this involves clicking a CSM ID reset button inside Collaborati. If you do not have access, request that CSM ID reset from our Collaborati team. Or you can send our clients there if necessary as well. This is one of our most common error messages, is that they either have the wrong URL and they're pointing to the wrong Collaborati. We have Collaborati Stage, Collaborati Test, and Collaborati Prod. Make sure that they're using the right URL there. Their user ID needs to also be correct for their client account, as well as making sure their password is set properly. There is also a password reset link inside of Collaborati, so that Team Connect's password will be reset just for CSM. And then you can also test that connection and make sure that everything is set up there. That's the most common thing that happens, but we're also going to cover CSM log error messages. So one thing that you can do is just search for that error message in Salesforce. You are very likely going to be able to find it. There's been a lot of CSM issues. There's a lot of variety of them, but in general, there's several that just pop up inside Salesforce. So here's an error message. File type of selected file is not supported, and there's some trace logs there, so you can dig into this more. What we found here was that there was a budget request that wasn't syncing. Let's open up the email here. Actually, let's go to their screenshot. They have some logs here. And while that's loading, we'll look at oh, there it goes. So we have a CSM text file that we can open up. We can find error. Here we can see that there was a failed budget request. So that immediately tells us that there is a specific budget request, and you can look through the stack trace and look through the previous line of information regarding which budget request may have hit this issue and have made the CSM sync fail. So you want to find those errors, just search for error inside those CSM logs, look at that stack trace, and when you do, look at what is happening right before that stack trace, and you can see that, oh, we're in this timekeeper synchronization section and this error message is happening, so it has to deal with timekeepers. Or like that example showed, it was a budget request issue, and so you look at the budget request sync section, you can see that there's an error message there when you look at that log, and you can determine, like we had shown on the vendor section, it will clearly state to you which vendor, which timekeeper, what the specific information is. For example, you have this specific information, support test vendor number of unmapped timekeepers 303. That lets you know that there are 3 approved in Team Connect, 3 approved in Collaborati, and 0 that are pending. So as you can see, there are specifics included inside the logs regarding vendor names, the budget request primary key, the actual timekeeper name or ID, and it'll give you that information just before that error message. Another example here is if you did say you did a search for unable to start synchronization. This case might come up and it required a CCF because we had to modify the Team Connect properties on the actual test environment, and you can look into the actual comments to see what was done, and you can also find that CCF to see what was done as well. And our final example here is cleaned up the previously staged Collaborati data and connection to test Collaborati. Their specific error message was vendor cannot be empty, and once that was fixed, they found they had to fix other vendor information, and this is because a environment has been refreshed with another environment's data information. So this commonly happens when a client decides to copy production data into a non-prod environment. And when that happens, you need to clean up the vendor accounts. Once you've cleaned the vendor accounts, you need to clear any of the sync tokens, and that will be covered in other trainings. But you can see from here, these are the steps that were required in order to correct this specific error message. And sometimes once you correct an error message, it just uncovers yet another one. But that's a lot of CSM issues, is that you fix maybe one vendor but find that the second vendor is also having the same issue, and you just kind of unbury that and clean everything up. So remember to troubleshoot CSM, first get the logs. Get the rule logger into debug, find those error messages, make sure you're looking in the right location, and work the issues one at a time.